It's not the NSA sneaking in on your, oh, they were listening. Y'all ready to get started? And for all of you online, just to remind you, I lied when I sent you an email and said I wasn't going to be here, so I apologize for that. I'm going to stay for about an hour and listen in. My two colleagues in this that you're going to meet shortly, if you haven't already, are Mike McGee and Miss Lisa Tuck in the back. And those of you that are streaming, we'll see Lisa in just a minute, and Mike is right here, also listed as Heartwood Training. Just so you know, they were also responsible for helping put together the training program that all of you are going through. So they helped us organize it and get the presenters and do stuff. And like any other good committee person, they're going to also present. They've presented native plants. Yeah, just as a data point, they were both, I didn't know Lisa and Mike until I met them in my intern class, which was 4 years ago.
5.
Does that sound right, Mike?
I think it's 5. I think it's
Has it
5.
been 5?
Yeah,
So 5 years ago. So this is what happens when you're in an intern class, you meet new friends. And these two people are native plant experts, at least in my opinion. So it's really fun to listen to what they have to say, which is another reason I wanted to listen in a little bit this morning, because I learned something every time that they do this. They've also helped me teach this at the Ellis unit and the prison where we do the Master Naturalist training in there. So if any of you ever want to go to prison someday, you need to let me know. This is your shot. Carolyn's going this year to teach entomology, since she's an entomology master certified expert, right? Close. I tell everybody you are, so. So anyway, the last thing I'm going to say, we're almost to the end of the journey, right? There's several more classes that are coming up. Terry MacArthur is going to head up 2 of them, and she's requested they be at Jones Forest. So instead of meeting here, we're going to have it at Jones Forest, and she also wants to do a little bit of a walkabout. And so in theory, one of us, whether it's me or Bobby or Carolyn, or maybe Adam in the back, is going to help us walk around with Terry and live stream that for those of you that don't come in person. If you can't come in person, you would be expected to actually get out of the classroom and walk around with Terry where she shows you stuff. So that's actually further transition to getting outdoors and doing stuff, which is the fun part of why we do all this. So there's also a session we're going to have for entomology for the intern class. That's going to be at the Sam Houston State University Attucks Museum in Huntsville. So for those of you coming in person, we'll give you directions as to how to get there. You can Google map it. Lisa helped arrange that meeting place and the presenter. So I think you'll find it interesting. So it's not only the entomology presentation, right, but they'll be able to get a tour of the museum.
Yeah.
That'll be part of it. So
Yeah, it's very cool.
Okay.
Yeah, what I found out, most universities don't really have all of their collections in one place. Like this professor has a collection of snails, this one has a collection of grasshoppers or whatever. And what Sam Houston State University did was put them all in one place. And so all in one building. The curator of that is an entomologist. And so he's going to do our entomology thing, and he's going to also show us around. So they have,
So Mike, with that, let's kick off native plants and get started. I'm going to slip out in about an hour, so it's good to see all of you regardless, online and here. So Lisa and Mike have the lead. Mike, you got it?
I got it.
Have at it. I actually killed your picture. Do you want me to put it back up?
I'm sharing my screen. Is it not there?
No, I just got it. Here, we've got you in the top right-hand corner with your smiling face just back from Alaska.
Yeah, okay.
The sculptures are on Mike.
All right.
This one's. Will that work?
Yep.
Have at it, Mike.
All righty. Good morning. I'd hoped to be with you, and As Scott has said, I just got back from Alaska and I brought back with me something other than the pictures and memories I hadn't expected, which was a cold. And I just decided it was best for me and you that I not be there this morning. So sorry I'm not there in person, but I look forward to this opportunity. First of all, I need to say I'm not an expert. I am interested in nature lifelong. I've been interested in native plants for many years. Volunteer with the natives group at Mercer, part of the Native Plant Society, but I'm no expert. I think I probably could be termed a guru, and I was introduced as that once in my working career, and I was all modest about it. And then the guy told me what guru stood for. It's a general understanding, relatively useless. So maybe I fit that criteria. So anyway. I really like this picture I took of a cardinal chick in my yard and a quote from one of my heroes, Teddy Roosevelt. And that could almost be the motto for us Texas master naturalists or all naturalists. This portion is on why to use natives, and it draws on several sources. Doug Tallamy's work and influences throughout the presentation. He's an entomology professor at the University of Delaware, and I would say he's the leading figure in the movement, I'll call it that, for using natives and using natives in your yard. And two of his books, Bringing Nature Home and Nature's Best Hope, are really outstanding. So if you're looking for science-based references, I would heartily recommend those. And he's a great presenter. He gave a talk at last year's state meeting, as well as the Texas Master Naturalist Tuesday, which I think Scott has given you a link. It's outstanding, and I'd recommend that to you as well. I'm no Doug Tallamy, either in knowledge or in presenting skills, but I will try to bring you some different materials in this and some that are specific to our chapter. So my objective is to give you a better understanding of how essential native plants are in our home landscaping and community landscaping. And if you're not already inclined, my hope is you will become committed toward the use of natives in your homes and become an advocate of natives to your friends and neighbors. I think we all have a very fundamental connection to nature. It's good for our soul, it's good for us emotionally, and it's good for our health. And there's studies that bear that out. So I want to start by listening to a couple of bird calls. I won't let you know what they are beforehand. You'll recognize one of them for sure, and maybe the other one. So first, the bird calls, and just think what they bring to your mind. So I think the second is going to go on for a little bit, but the first call is a red-shouldered hawk, and that's reminds me of my retirement home here in Spring, Texas, and I hear it out when I'm out in the yard. And that second persistent bird is the western meadowlark, and that's the state bird of Kansas. And every time my wife and I go back to our hometown, we like to go out in the country and enjoy the sunsets and listen to the meadowlark. And one of the last times we went back, we couldn't find a meadowlark. And since we graduated from high school, the number of meadowlarks have declined by over 70%. And I'm getting ahead of myself, but that's what this is sort of about, is preserving nature. Much of the reasons for native plants have to do with coevolution of plants and insects over time. And one of the hardest things to get our head around is time and relative time. So I want to start with a little exercise for both the class that are in person and remotely, and I'll start a poll here in a second, assuming that I can do so. And so the exercises try to estimate when complex life first began on Earth. And by complex life, this is on the sea, and this is a picture of a fossil of a trilobite. And that's the complex life I'm thinking about. So if you extend your arms out from their full width and take time 0 as your left hand and current day as your right, the exercise will be to try to figure out where along that continuum of time complex life first appeared. So let me start the poll. So those of you at home will have multiple guess or multiple choice. So if you're remotely, if you see that, go ahead and enter it. And I'm not seeing any entries yet. Okay, I'm just re-entered it. Okay, so the choices are 3 billion years ago, 1.5 billion years ago, 1 billion years ago, 500 million years ago, or 200 million years ago. And I should have given that A, B, C, D, E. So A is 3 billion, B is 1.5, C is 1 billion years ago, D is 500 million, and E is 200 million years ago. So I'm seeing some guesses that are coming in, or I guess informed guesses by many of you. So those in the class, just will do a show of hands. How many thinks it's A, 3 billion? How many B, 1.5 billion? How many C? That's a billion years ago. How many D, 500 million years ago? And how many E, 200 million years ago? Well, I'm going to end the polling online. I'm going to share the results. I hope you'll be able to see that. And the answer is what the majority of people offline saw. It's 500 million years ago. So if you think about it, this analogy we had in my hand, that would be on your right wrist. All right. So all the rest of time was in creating an atmosphere, much less complex forms of life. And the first complex form of life occurred 500 million years ago. So to put man's time in perspective, all of human recorded history could be erased by the scrape of a single fingernail file on your right index finger. So we are very new to life, but our impact is not. It is new, but it is recent and it is profound. This is a graph showing the estimated population of the Earth over time, and it starts at 10,000 BC or 12,000 years ago when the estimated population was 1 million people. That's when it's estimated that man had gone to all the continents except for Antarctica, and had started farming and raising animals. And what you see is that the plot's basically just a slow growth until an inflection point. And that inflection point is basically at the Industrial Revolution. And from that time onwards, we've had this astronomical growth rate that's brought us to our current population of about 7.5 billion people. Now I've put the references on here, and this Gapminder has some very good information on population growth as well and background. It's estimated that we will plateau around 11 billion, and the number of what are termed children is already plateaued at 2 billion. So there is, this will not continue indefinitely, but just over my lifetime, the number of people on the earth has tripled. And the number of people in the United States has gone up by about 2.1 times. About half the arable land has been converted to feeding humans. That's between pasture land and cropland. And if we look at the lower 48, and the next two graphs are all about the lower 48, Alaska is a very different story. Only about 3 to 5% of the land is left in its undisturbed state for habitat. And one of the big segments of forest land is not in its native state. It is in a logging state where it's used for timber, and it's not old growth forest. So this shows further detail about the lower 48 states and how the land is used. A couple things to show is that pasture land, of course, is a big segment in yellow, and then at least it shows up kind of as a greenish yellow on mine is for crop land. The biggest single segment of our land, and that's 41%, is devoted to livestock. That's either directly as pasture land or grazing, growing crops to feed those livestock. Another large growing section, I'll show a bit more about that later on, is the pink portion up in the northeast. That's what we use for our housing. That's growing fast at about 1 million acres of urban area a year, and that's the equivalent to adding the area of Los Angeles, Houston, and Phoenix combined every year. And now just bringing this a little closer to home, this is a graph showing 2 areas from Google Earth. Significance of it is that it's a 6 by 4 mile area that's centered on my house. And so that squiggly line that goes through there is Spring Creek, and that divides Harris. And as you see on the right, it was largely forested land that had been logged. Most of it had been logged, and very little urban area. And now 17 years later, as you can see, it's largely urbanized. The sole exceptions are up to the northeast that hasn't been developed yet, and along Spring Creek. And that's a reserve, that's Spring Creek Greenway, and preserved lands are one of, I think, the largest contiguous river preserves in the United States. So this urbanization is happening locally, and it's happening very fast. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this because I think it's important for our understanding. And there's something called the species area relationship that says the number of species is equal to some constant times the habitat area raised to a power. And there's a couple hundred years of research and studies that establish this empirical correlation for all kinds of different species. And this shows one of those correlations for freshwater fish species, which is shown on a log scale because it's a logarithmic correlation, and it shows that the 3 continents have several thousand species, and yet Hawaii, very small land area, has 4 or 5 freshwater species. And and of course, much smaller land area. So this is an example of a species area relationship. And I like to think of it as like your checking book or your bank balance. The amount that you have at the end of a period equals what you started out with, plus what you've deposited, less what you've taken away. In the case of species, the amount we have is what we started with over a period, plus those that are created. Speciation is the term for that, minus those that went extinct. And if you think about it, it makes sense that extinction rates are going to be lower over a larger area because you have a bigger population spread over a wider area. So threats like a climate threat or disease that can cause extinction are less likely to occur because the population is more widely spread. Also with speciation, over a larger area, you have more barriers isolating groups so that you have more chance for a isolated group to have a new trait or mutation that causes a new species that now prevails because of that mutation. So speciation should also be higher over a larger area. And there's a practical example of this that was created with the Panama Canal when they created a lake to run the locks, and the mountaintop became an island, and that island is biologically protected area, and those going in and off the island are carefully protected and controlled, and it's basically a biological research area. Well, since this island has been isolated from the rest of the habitat, this land area is now less, and what is predicted to happen has happened. Some 50 to 80 bird species, non-migratory bird species, have disappeared. About 8% of the butterfly population have disappeared, and all 3 of the cat species that were on the island have disappeared. So there's a practical demonstration of this species area relationship. One of the consequences of loss of habitat is that there will be a similar loss of species. With our loss of habitat in the lower 48, we have a large species debt. And preventing that, and I'll speak to that in a second, requires a great deal of effort. So our conservation in the United States started really with the national park system in 1872, many state parks since then. It was the Wilderness Act in 1964, which designated wilderness areas, and then the Endangered Species Act in 1973. It's been, depending on how you look at it, very successful or not so successful. There's a little over 2,000 endangered plants and animals currently listed, and it's been very successful at preventing extinctions. It's only been 10 extinctions since it was passed, but there have only been, I think this is 28, I think it's now 29 with the wolf taken off last year, species that are recovered, that are considered no longer endangered. So only about 1.5% of the species have recovered enough to no longer be considered endangered. Excuse me. So in the United States, our main strategy has been nature reservations for preserving nature. And there are several disadvantages with that. there's limited area left available for that, and it takes very active management to maintain species in that reserves. And arable ecosystems are underrepresented in our state and national parks. Extinction rates are estimated at currently being about 100 times the natural rate. And there's a lot of discussion that we've entered the 6th global extinction. There's a good book by that title that I'd recommend to you. Whether or not we've entered that or not is unclear, but we do have very high rates of extinction currently. And UN has estimated in the report that I've cited here, 1,000 species that face extinction. And over half of the land species lack sufficient land for long-term survival, or 500,000 land species don't have enough land for their long-term survival. There's a lot of this information is, I guess you'd say, is sort of depressing to us naturalists. There is some, there is light at the end of the tunnel, and there are some things that we can do, and there are a lot of things that are being done to circumvent this. But I'm giving you, basically the background to start off with. So the World Wildlife Federation, excuse me, I'll need to shut off my phone. And the London Zoological Society have developed what they call a living planet index. And this index monitors 4,400 vertebrate species that have the data back to 1970. And this graph shows how that index has declined since from 1970 to 2016. It shows that there's a 68% decline in these vertebrate species over that period, with the greatest decline in South America. And so another question for you, and I'll launch the poll, is what do you think are the largest threats or the largest causes of vertebrate species decline in the United States? Your choices are shown on the screen. Let me get around to launching my poll. Let's see, I got to go to my second poll, just a second. All right, so those of you at home should now be seeing your poll. And so the choices for those in the class are shown up here. In a second, I'll ask for a show of hands. So in the class, how many think it's A? How many think it's B? How many think it's C? How many think it's D? And how many think it's E? So I'm going to end the polling online now. We've got 21 of you in. Share the results, and almost 90% of those online got the right answer. It's actually land use, and in fact, they're listed in the order of occurrence. I'll bring that up now. So the actual percentages are shown there. So land use is by far the largest threat and cause, and they're listed in their order. All right, so let me stop sharing the results. And some of you have probably seen this study on the decline of North American bird population that has declined by about 2 or 3 billion birds since 1970. Sources noted here. The population decline is greatest amongst grassland birds with a 53% decline, and about 75% of the species are experiencing decline. One biome showed an increase, and that's worth noting, and that's wetland species have increased by a little over 10% over that period. And it's a good example for that we can restore species, bird species, and the waterfowl population increased through billions of dollars were invested in the preservation of wetlands by private and governmental programs and something called adaptive harvest management. Among the notable private organizations that involved in this effort are Ducks Unlimited, and they have conserved more than 14 million acres of habitat since 1937. So what's the consequence of loss of species, and what does it do to ecosystem stability? The current thinking is that it's sort of like a Jenga puzzle. As you start taking out species, the dependencies change. And interdependencies change, and you can take out more and more species, but you'll get to a point that an ecosystem can collapse. And there is a cautionary example of that that comes really from Easter Island, where this is a picture of the iconic Maui sculptors on Easter Island. The Rapa Nui culture built those sculptures, and that culture had a peak population of 15,000 people on the island. Then largely due to overexploitation of the native palm trees that they used to build fishing boats and importation of an invasive rat species, their deforested ecosystem collapsed. So when Europeans first arrived in the 1700s, the population on the island had declined from 15,000 to 2,000 people. So the consequences of losing biodiversity and losing species is that our ecosystems become less stable, and these ecosystems become less efficient at providing the services that humans need in our largely urban environments. And I've listed those services, pollinating crops, controlling floods, carbon sequestration. Those are all services that the ecosystems provide to humans. That's sort of dry, a listing like that. Let's talk about something, a real life example that all of us have experienced. And this is citing data from Antonio Sebastian from a study in 2019. You can reference, that's an open source study. You can find it online. And that's what was the consequences of Hurricane Harvey, which we know, billions of dollars of damages, and I've seen upward of 300 deaths. This one reference had 88, but it was a huge impact. And so the study was done that looked at, well, what would have been the impact without man's impact on our ecosystem? So they built hydrological models of the Houston area drainage system, and looked at what the consequences would have been in its native state versus what it would have been after development, and then they history matched after development to validate that they had a good model. So again, here's a multiple choice, and I'll now start another poll, just a second. For online, so you should be seeing it at home. So how much do you think man's impact had on our ecosystem to increase Harvey flooding? And this combined impact of development and any global warming impacts. So it's a combined impact. So it's 15%, 50%, 85%, or 125%. So do the same thing in the class while they're voting at home. How many thinks it's 15%? How many of you think it was 50% by this study? How many of you think it is 85%? And then how many of you think it is 125%? All right, so let me end the polling. Let me share the results. And I don't see it the class, but those at home, most thought it was 125%, and the second most was 85%. Well, the answer, as it turns out, is 85% by this study. And they estimated that rainfall was increased about 15% by climate change. There have been a number of studies that have been done on the impact of climate change, and there is a range amongst those studies, but the authors chose most representative being 15%. And the peak flooding was, this is over multiple rivers and measurement points. Was increased by 50%, and that includes the impact of reservoirs and detention ponds. So although we do have added those, that does not make up for all of the impervious surfaces and other things we've done to increase flooding from any rainfall event. So there was a study done by the World Wildlife Fund called the Bend the Curve Initiative, and it was reported last year in the Living Planet report that shows that this loss of biodiversity, loss of species, it can be reversible. And they did a study to show that, but it can be reversed by 2100. But to achieve that, it requires significant changes across multiple dimensions, including supply side efforts to improve agricultural productivity, and basically also producing those agricultural products where they can be done most efficiently. Demand side improvements that reduce agricultural waste in all phases like harvest, distribution, and consumption. And then changes in dietary preferences that would move towards more vegetable calories and less meat calories. And lastly, increase conservation efforts to prevent additional loss of protected land and encourage both restoration and wildlife outcomes for lands currently not protected or in other uses. And I would say that many Heartwood chapter volunteer hours are focused on this last effort. Examples would be Bioland Conservancy, Native Plant Society of Texas, the Spring Creek Ambassadors Programs, invasive removal programs. There's just a vast number of places where our Heartwood chapter members spend time on that last area. There is an evolving strategy for conservation that's different than our reservation strategy, and this Michael Reisenzweig has coined the term reconciliation ecology. And basically it's establishing new habitats to conserve species diversity in places where we live and work or play. So what it tries to do is to eliminate this constant struggle between the environment and progress or our livelihoods. Is it, there's this tension that we've often had for a number of years between those two things. And the idea here is let's figure out how we can do both things at the same time. And growing native plants in our home gardens or in our community parks is a prime example of reconciliation ecology. And I think this is the future and the best way for us to proceed, where we do both of the things at the same time. I'll show you one more graph. This is very graph and heavy. I guess I'm showing my background as an engineer, but this slideshow will show you why our yards matter, and it will show you how urbanization is starting to dominate the landscape. So what you want to look at are the colors. Stop sharing those results that show the bottom three colors. The city is the what shows up on my screen is brown, orange is suburban areas, and exurbs are yellow. And what we will show those is over time. This is from census data from 1960, and then there's a projection for 2030. We can go ahead and get that launched. Okay. So as you can see, by 2030, most of the eastern half of the United States is going to be in one of those classifications of urban areas, and a good part of the West Coast as well. So that's habitat for our terrestrial birds, and our yards and urbanized areas are going to be critical for their survival. Excuse me. So why do we need plants? We need them for oxygen and converting carbon dioxide to oxygen, and that's how we convert the sun's energy into food. And we couldn't survive, positively couldn't survive without plants. They're the foundation of our food web, and they're critical to every ecosystem. And the diversity of animals is directly linked to the diversity of plants in our ecosystem. And that link between diversity of plants and number of species applies to our yards and communities as well. So if you want a diversity of animals in your yard, that includes insects and other higher forms of life, you need to have a diversity of plants. And what I'm going to just thumb through, it's a new hobby I have of taking pictures of different species in my yard. And these were taken all between mid-May and mid-June, and there are only 2 orders. I'm just showing the Lepidoptera and Odonata orders, and ones that I could get decent pictures of over about a month period. I don't have a monarch, although I saw a picture. I saw one yesterday. I didn't get a decent picture, and it wasn't in my study period of 1 month. And we have something like 60 to 80 native species of plants in our yard. So it's like that saying, you know, if you build it, they will come. So it's amazing how quickly that you will find that the insects that need that plant will arrive once you plant it. So why do we need insects? Well, E.O. Smith has called them the little things that run the earth. They're the primary source of transferring energy from plants to other forms of life. They're the primary herbivores. They're not livestock or other herbivores, it's insects. They're the food source for essentially all of our North American terrestrial bird species young. They're essential for pollination, they're essential for decomposition, and they play a key role in our ecosystems, all of them, and are essential for them. So why do we need native plants? And that has to do with what I talked about at the beginning, this coevolution of plants and insects over millions of years. The plants are prey to insects, and they have developed defenses against the prey, and that of many different types, but one of the principal is physical and chemical defenses, and they have secondary metabolic chemicals that makes them toxic or distasteful. And only certain insects have developed the ability to eat the plants despite those secondary metabolic chemicals. So what's evolved is this very sophisticated synchronization and adaptation between insects and plants, and both in their life cycles, but insects don't eat non-native plants because they don't recognize them as food. And there's just an interesting example of that is the Passiflora vine and the long-winged butterfly coevolution. The long-winged butterfly of instars are voracious eaters, and they can completely consume and even kill a mature plant. And the first instar is also highly cannibalistic. It will eat any other instars. It will also eat eggs. And so the long-winged butterfly knows that, and if she sees eggs on the plant leaf, she will not lay her eggs on that plant because she knows that they won't survive. So it knows that's through this evolution, basically. And so what the Passiflora has done is it's developed the ability to create fake yellow eggs, so that it appears that there are already eggs on the leaf. Also has a defense of having drooping, sick-looking leaves, so that it's not considered a good site to lay eggs. And they also have a defense of different shaped leaves, so that perhaps the butterfly won't see that this what kind of plant it is. So it's a very sophisticated dance between predator and prey in the plant and insect community. So 90% of plant-eating insects are specialists. Native plants produce some 35 times more caterpillar biomass than alien plants. And bird populations are limited by the food they can find, and particularly for their young. Alien plants contribute little to the web of life. They may be beautiful, they may bring color to your yard, but they're not doing anything for life. And sometimes they bring with them alien pests. So now we're going to have another multiple guess. Whoops, let me go back, sorry. Let me go back to the polls. And launch another poll. And this is how many larvae do you think it takes to raise a clutch? And a clutch is typically 4 or 5 eggs per nest of Carolina chickadees from the time they hatch to the time they're ready to fledge. This is data from Doug Tallamy. Probably seen this before. We're getting a pretty high success rate here. So I'm going to end the polling online. We've got 19 out of 26 have voted. Share the results. So the answer is, well, the range is from 6,000 to 9,000. So I'm using 7,500 as descriptive of that, and those of you who are doing this remotely, the majority got the correct answer there. So good for you. So stop sharing the results. And so can one yard make a difference? This is, again, as an example out of Doug Tallamy's Nature's Best Hope book of a lady in Chicago. She actually lives near Chicago's O'Hare Field. She has a 50 by 100 foot garden. So that's a relatively small garden. In it, she has over 200 species of plants, including 60 species of native plants she's added in 25 years. And the garden attracts a wide variety of birds. She's recorded over 103 species of birds in her yard. So a yard, even a small yard, can make a real difference. This is a slide showing keystone plants in our area. What's shown is the number of caterpillars that are hosted. This is principally moths and butterflies by different plant genus. And the champion is Quercus genus. And I've listed the examples that are native to our area and host over 468. Next, the prune family of which includes Mexican plum, and on down the list of trees. And then I've listed at the bottom some of the flowering plants. Solidago genus is the highest number, the goldenrods. And then next comes sunflower genus. So these are the ones that plants that host a large number of different species. If you want, however, to have a specific species like the beautiful Pipevine swallowtail that's shown in the picture in the upper right-hand corner, it's one of my favorites, that beautiful blue color. There's only one way you're going to host it and get it to propagate in your yard, and that's by having the Pipevine genus of plants. So what are the benefits of natives in your yard? I've already talked about the first point. It's lower maintenance, use biological pest control, better plant survivability that was graphically demonstrated in our winter storm Uri, and it's also true for droughts because the plants are adapted. They're water conservation is a benefit because of this same adaptation to our environment, as well as a sense of place and season. We don't have fall foliage like New England, but we do have some pretty spectacular displays of fall and spring color from native trees and shrubs and our flowering plants that are native to our ecosystems in our area. And these are some pictures taken in October, will be 4 years ago this October, in our yard of just different fall color, all from native plants and the wildlife that they bring to us. So why do my wife Sharon and I plant natives in our yard? Well, our reasons are they improve the quality of our life. Also conserve water and money, and they add to the enjoyment of our home. And so those are really our reasons. And I would kind of open this up for discussion and any questions, but if you would like to participate, I would be interested. And if you enter in the Q&A, what ways you think you can and will contribute to conserving nature in your home and community. And also, what are the ways you think the Heartwood chapter can contributing to conserving nature? And I will mention that there is a program that we're working on launching. Carolyn is quite familiar with that, and Lisa and I are a part of it, and is one where we will be launching it where we will send ambassadors or specialists out to people's yards that request this service. We'll do a survey. We'll give some educational materials and information about natives. We'll provide a written report. We're not going to be doing landscape design, but we'll do a report and offer that to them. We'll have other references of where they can find natives, as well as we will have signage with various levels of native plants and removal of invasives. So it's one of the things that this chapter is in the process of developing and will be rolling out shortly. So if I don't see any, if there are any questions, if there's anybody there, I don't see those. I'll stop my screen share. So let me go to the chat, see if there's. There was a question from which pipevine. That's any of the pipevines that are in that genera. There's Dutchman's pipe is what is local to our area. It's hard to find and hard to propagate. We sell one called Brazilian pipevine at Mercer that is easier to propagate, and it suits that purpose as well. So it will also work. I see a comment about adding swamp chestnut and new grasses. I'm just looking for questions I may not have answered. I hope you get a nice picture, Bobby, of a bald eagle. Yeah, I got several. I didn't get the one where its talons out. That's really tricky, but I've got some fantastic pictures of bald eagles from Alaska and brown bears and humpback whales. And I would mention that humpback whale is one of the species that they think would be extinct were it not for the Endangered Species Act. And we saw scores of them, and they're endlessly fascinating to photograph and see. I don't see any other questions, so I think that kind of concludes my part. So I'll turn it back over. I don't know who's emceeing this now. That's there.
It's me, Mike.
All right.
Hey, Mike.
All right. Hi.
It's, I've never seen your presentation before, and it's amazing.
Well, thank you.
You do us proud.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks to Doug Talamy and all the people that do all the research that gets all this information.
Absolutely amazing. So what I'd like to do is give everyone a break, a 10, 15-minute break, and then we'll start with Lisa's presentation. You see you ready? Okay, awesome. Yeah, yes, just come up here if you haven't signed in yet. And thank you so much, Mike. I so appreciate you coming in. Well, I hope you feel better. I'm glad you zoomed in with us this morning.
Yeah, I'm wearing it out little by little.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and mute, and then we'll head to break. Okay, so we're not going to do that thing. We're going to do this after. Oh, we're going to do this after your presentation. That way the people are there not waiting. Great. So my presentation's down here. Yes.
So we good? So the people at home can see it and all that?
Are you sharing your screen?
I don't know.
Let's do that.
Sorry, I'm a little technology challenged.
Let's share your desktop.
Okay.
So this is what we do when we're not sure,
Okay.
is we say, can y'all hear us out in the Zoom universe? Someone open up and tell us.
I can hear you. I just can't see your presentation.
Just can't see the presentation. Let's
Okay.
see.
I see your beautiful faces.
Oh, how awesome is that? Sharing desktop. Adam. They said they can't, and I'm getting that feedback. Let me make sure that this speaker's off. Okay, we're getting a little feedback, and they say they can't see the presentation.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'll do this.
I need
I
to-
have to let y'all know because I'm in the LSC United States. Okay, how's that? Okay.
Oh, God. Yeah, till Lisa gets
Oh,
going.
gosh.
That's a challenge.
This doesn't work. I'll try restart another thing. Okay, how's that?
Still just seeing your chin.
My chin? Okay. Anything? No? Okay, let me try this. Share screen. Oh,
There it goes.
okay.
Yay.
Okay, there you
Okay.
Thank you, Adam.
All right, thanks. Okay, so this is the second half of the program. So Mike went over pretty much the why, and then I go over the how to do this. I'm a native plant person. I'm a plant person anyway, and I am ardently in favor of native plants, and I'm a gardener. And a lot of times when I first started gardening, it was kind of gardening by hoping for the best. I don't recommend that. And so now I'm a lot better than I used to be. And so here's some stuff that I've learned, and we'll just get going. I will tell the people at home, everybody who's zooming in, I have just a little bit of a problem with standing in one place and talking at the same time. So if I pop in and out of your screen, just to let you know, I will show back up. And
Can you just stay right there? 'Cause they can hear you.
oh, the microphone is right here, so I'll try and stay right here, and I may hop around. Okay, so just so you know. Okay, all right. Okay, so the issue, and this kind of sums up Mike's presentation. So half the world's land is used to feed humans. That means a significant loss of habitat for other species, and that reduces their chances of survival. And many of the species displaced are the same ones that are necessary to pollinate our food. So that's a conundrum. That is a catch-22. And so we want to help our pollinators as much as we can.
Bar at the top.
What?
Just remove that bar at the top.
Okay,
Where is it? On there.
I don't know. We want to remove the bar at the top.
That'll do, right? And I'm not sure we need to see Scott all the time either, right?
That work?
Better?
Yay, thank you, sir. Okay, all right. Okay, so what to do? What we want to do is provide nectar and pollen for the adults and provide host plants for the offspring. We've got two different generations that need to eat here. And so we need to have the pollen and the nectar for the adults, and we need to have the host plants for the offspring. One thing I want to talk about, just briefly address on the host plants. We hear all the time that, oh, plant milkweed, because, you know, we've got to feed the pollen, we've got to feed the monarchs. Well, guess what? Everybody else has a special plant that they eat too. So like if you want to have a pipevine swallowtail, you've got to have pipevine. If you want to have the Gulf fritillary, then you need a passion vine. If you want to have black swallowtail, then you need to have parsley or fennel. They each like their own host plant. So you need to feed their babies. So you need to give them something to lay their eggs on so that the caterpillars have something to eat. So we'll talk about both of those. So, okay, so what to consider when planting, what you want to accomplish in that spot. Okay, so what the focus of this presentation is going to be supporting our pollinators. So what I'm going to talk about wanting to accomplish in that spot is supporting the pollinators. It may be that you want to have a, spot that gets marshy, or it just, and so you want to put in a water feature there. That may be your focus there, but then you could also support pollinators around that. But anyway, before you decide what to plant, know what you want to accomplish. Consider your soil. Native, I again ardently support native plants. Chances are excellent you don't have native soil, particularly if you live in a subdivision. Okay, consider the amount of sun you're going to get. Come to find out, there's sun, part shade, double shade, and shade. Who knew? And full sun is actually, the definition of it is 6 hours. We get 14. I mean, you know, if your plant is out in the sun, it's going to get 14. So there are only some, even if it says full sun, be aware that that plant may not be able to survive that. Your vegetables are going to love it. Your vegetables are going to love 14 hours, and your herbs, for the most part, are going to love 14 hours of sun. Not so much for things. Your natives are going to have a lot better chance of it than stuff like you get in the nursery. Okay, consider the water. You want to make sure, oh my gosh, I love this plant, I love this plant, I love this plant. Oh, this one takes a lot of water and this one wants dry feed. Okay, don't plant them in the same bed. Because if you're going to water these over here, then you're going to drown this guy. Or if you don't water for this guy, then you're going to have to go out there with a watering can, you know, to water that one plant. Really? Okay, so make sure that you look at the water too. Okay, and where the plant normally grows versus where you are. I can't tell you the number of native plant sales I've been to, and I buy something. Now I look them up on my phone while I'm there, but I get home and find out it only grows in Big Bend. Really? Really? Then why are you selling it in Walker County? Just saying. And I mean, that's annoying to me, but okay. So what I want to accomplish. So again, what we're going to talk about on this one are pollinators. We want to attract and support them. The pollinators evolved with native plants, and so did other insects. They all evolved together. They need nectar, and they may need host plants. Be sure that the pollinator you're planting for is actually in your area. Okay, this was, go back to, I first started off by gardening by hoping for the best. Okay, so anyway, so I moved to Walker County, and I'm going to plant this thing. And I said, oh, look, it attracts this butterfly. You know, oh my gosh, I was so excited. And then one of my gardening buddies up there said, oh, is that butterfly here? And I'm going, I'll look that up. And I mean, that butterfly is like in Maine. Really? Okay, so make sure that whatever it is you're trying to attract is really where you are. Okay, and know when the pollinator is coming through. You may need nectar plants in the spring and in the fall. A friend of mine, a really good friend of mine, is like one of 2 people in the state of Texas that has like a particular certification in monarchs. And she said that they have researched the crud out of all the different milkweeds, and particularly in the Houston area, in Harris County where she is, there's only like 1 milkweed that they'll really eat. Okay, but you go to a plant sale and you can buy 8 different species of milkweed. knock your lights out, but they're only going to eat the one.
So which one is that one?
I don't remember, but I'll find out. Okay, my bad. Maybe I shouldn't have brought that up since I don't know the answer. But anyway, I will find that out. And anyway, she just texted me. We're going to have lunch on Monday. I'll tell Carolyn. She can send it. Yeah, I'll ask her. But anyway, and plus, like some milkweeds, you know, where they like really need it, you know, is like heading north. You know, they need food for themselves coming south. Where they want to lay their eggs is when they're going north. So you don't want to plant a milkweed that grows in the fall, right? Because they're coming through in the spring. Okay. Pollinators, we want to attract and support. What do you want to accomplish? 3-foot groupings of plants. This, when I first moved into our house north of Huntsville, and I said, oh, look how pretty, you know, I'm just going to dot these plants everywhere, you know, and so but then I subsequently found out you need like 3 feet of white, 3 feet of red, because they can see the color, but they see it in bigger areas than just one plant at a time. Okay, diverse bloom times, again, you want, because they need food all year round, right? They don't quit eating after the spring. So you want to have some that bloom in the spring, some that bloom in the summer, some that bloom in the fall. And if you can find some that bloom in the winter, yay, because they need to eat all year. A variety of flower shapes and sizes. Some of them have little flat faces, some of them have little things, you know, that, and clearly I know next to nothing about insects, you know, as far as their structure, but anyway, they need different shapes of flowers. Okay. Diverse colors, avoid pesticides and plants that are embedded in them. Okay, so you can go to Home Depot or Lowe's or wherever, a nursery, and get a plant that says guaranteed not to get eaten by bugs. Oh, that's because they embedded it with a bug killer. Okay, let's not invite them to dinner and kill them. That is rude. And so let's avoid the plants that are going to kill them. Okay, I mean, if we're going to get plants to draw in the pollinators, let's make sure they survive it. Okay, avoid hybrids. Again, there's the thing that the pollinators evolved with the natives. They may not even see a hybrid. It may not just come in on their little bug radar, you know, their pollinator. Oh, and I keep referring to bugs, but keep in mind your hummingbirds are pollinators. I mean, there are other kinds of pollinators besides just insects. Okay, include natives in your garden. I've seen a lot of native plant people who say, oh, the whole thing needs to be natives. And my goal is to have at least a few. My sister told me I could redo her yard totally in natives if I wanted to, as long as it was evergreen. I had a bunch of different colors of flowers, and I had this, 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 and this. And I'm going, okay, we've just eliminated every native I know. But she agreed to let me plant 3. Okay, and so I counted that as a win. For me, we've got to start somewhere. And so I'm going to start with getting everybody to plant at least 1 or 2 or 3 or preferably 10, but as many as I can. But I'm going to settle for getting them started. Okay. Okay, soil can be a challenge. Okay, my sister for a while, okay, for for the where you want to live spectrum and how different siblings can be, you know, I'm on 100 acres north of Huntsville. My sister had a 3-story tri-level thing inside the loop in Houston. Okay, so this was there. Okay, and you see the difference between here and here, that 1 foot. That is because the building code changed there. Okay, so a lot of times, like they're going to start a new subdivision or something and they level everything and then they bring in all this clay. It could easily be because the building code changed. Like that area, particularly in Harris County, you know, the elevation is 10 feet and the building code now says it has to be 12 feet to build anything there. They have to eliminate everything there. You can't put more than a couple of inches of soil on tree roots and have them survive. In fact, there was a subdivision in Clear Lake that they had sold premium lots that had all these well-established oaks. And then they brought in all the soil that they had to do. All of those oaks died and the builder got sued. So anyway, but unless you're planting in a pasture or your house was built before 1960, you may not have native soil. Okay, foundations are typically on or in clay. They'll bring in clay. Now they typically try to get the clay only as far as the end of the foundation of the house. So you may still have native around here, but you may not, because then they're also going to bring in some kind of bedding soil, because the contract typically comes with a thing that says they have to have put so much landscaping in there, but it's still not going to be native. Okay. And again, the new building codes can require a higher elevation, as demonstrated here. Okay, even if you're in a pasture like me, you may not have native soil, because we kind of built on a hump. He ended up having to bring in 40 dump truck loads of clay just to kind of even out the hump, you know, so we could build our house there. But that was the best place for us because of the breeze and, you know, all that stuff. So anyway, this next picture on the right is what he did, he scraped off all the topsoil and put it over here, put the clay down, and then pushed the topsoil back. So what I ended up with was, you know, 3 to 6 inches of topsoil. Okay, but you can see that's just a little hand spade right here on the right. And right under that is this red clay that they brought in to build my foundation. Okay, so the small plants could do that. For trees, it was more problematic. And I'll show y'all a poor tree that we finally just took out after the big freeze. It got down to -2 at our place, you know, for the big freeze last year. So the tree on the left was an oak tree that we planted beyond the imported clay. The one on the right was closer to the house, so it was in the imported clay. We planted those at the same time. Yeah. Finally, after the freeze, this guy on the right came back with like 3 leaves, and I'm going, you know what? I'm no longer going to let you die a slow death. I'm just going to take you out and put an end to your misery. And so I ended up recently taking that tree out because it wasn't gonna do. Plus, what I didn't know then, you know, was really how to plant a tree properly. And so I think its roots were just swirling around in there and all that clay. Okay. Is that right? Yeah. Okay, so what does this mean? You can and should still plant natives. You have an extra 6 inches of clay, no worries. Natives typically have really deep roots. You dig below the clay to ensure the roots go there. Fill in with a mix of the clay you just dug up and native soil, or as close as you can get. What you don't want to do is, what you don't want to do is if you dig your hole and then you put in soil that you know that plant is really going to like, because then it's never going to try to go out into the clay. Its little roots are just going to stay right there and then just swirl around. There's 2 different techniques on digging the hole that I have seen. Howard Garrett says dig an ugly hole. So don't make it round like you make it, you know, have little things so that the roots will go that way. Then there's another school of thought that says dig the hole exactly the size of your container, because then it has to go out. And this is what my twin brother does, and everything he's ever planted has worked really well. So, you know, you choose or try different ones or whatever. But Howard Garrett, dig an ugly hole. Larry Tuck, dig one just barely bigger than the, you know, exactly the size of the pot. Okay. Okay, if you have several feet of non-native clay, that is more challenging. And here's the 2 schools on the hole. Okay, give the water a place to go. This is critical. Okay, so where we brought in like the clay for our house, okay, so we have kind of a slope there. Okay, so if I'm planting a tree there, then I have to have some kind of place. Otherwise, I've built it in New Orleans, right? I have built it in a place that's going to fill up like a bowl. That's going to drown that tree. So you got to give the water a place to go. And again, fill in with the mix of the clay you just dug up and native soil. Okay, so this is back to my sister's house inside the loop. This was her next door neighbor. And and I'm telling you, they had like 25 to 50 square feet of yard. of something that they could plant in. This is what her next door neighbor did. These are not all natives, but the potential for natives, even in this small space, was amazing. This is what she did going down. She had the big yard because she was on the corner, my sister's next door neighbor, and she put AstroTurf down the whole right-hand side because she did not want to mess with it. And then some just little bushes up against the house. But then check these things that she hung on her fence back there. Okay, these are not natives either, but they could have been. So think outside the bed, essentially. Think outside the bed, because there are other things. You can use these tall flower pots. You can use the things that you hang on your fence. Think outside the bed, because there are other places you can put natives. And what we're trying to do is help the pollinators. Okay. This was a Texas star hibiscus, which I found out it's not native to Texas, which I think is just wrong since it's a Texas star hibiscus, but it's like native as far as Mississippi. But anyway, I gave her that and she put it in a pot and put it in between her house and my sister's. Okay, sun versus shade. Direct sun, full sun is 6 hours a day, part sun 3 to 6, part shade 2 to 4. Dappled shade comes through trees or a filter, and shade is no more than 2 hours a day. Vegetables may need 8 to 10, flower gardens, not so much. Plants may need full sun to set the buds and flower, but not the heat or dry conditions that come with it afterward. So if you have a location or you have something that says it will survive full sun, but hasn't survived like smack in the middle of the yard where it's going to get the 10 to 14 hours a day, then consider putting it in a different place the next time after that one fries. You know, put it in a different place the next time that maybe just gets evening sun or just gets morning sun. Okay. Since we built in a pasture, I had like 6 square inches of shade. So, I mean, everything that I planted had to be, you know, pretty hardy to survive the sun. And then I also have had to water it. I had to water it, natives or not, because they're getting way more sun than they're used to. Now that they're established, yeah, you know, not so much. But if we go a week or without water, I'm having to water my flower beds, no matter what. Okay, sun versus shade. Okay, so the top one, here's a place where I have shade part of the day. It's at the end of our little shop. And so that's ginger, where it's living on the edge. Below the ginger is pigeonberry. So this is the one place in my yard where I had enough shade that pigeonberry would grow. And pigeonberry is a native. This was a clay substrate. So what I needed to do was give the water a place to go, right? So I put in a French drain from the left-hand end of that little bed because I had a slope like going down the driveway. So I put a French drain just long enough until I could get it away from there. Otherwise, I'm going to drown everything in there because it was just a clay substrate. This was part of the place where we had brought in the clay. I dug it down, put in a French drain, and then filled it with dirt that these plants would like. So this was not native soil, but I was able to make it happen. Okay. Then the one below that, so before my sister had the place inside the loop, she had this house in League City. That is ginger growing where it loves to grow. Okay, this ginger got 12 feet tall and had these beautiful flowers, you know, that hung over the pool. And I mean, gosh, it was stunning, stunning. And that was in the shade. The one below, yeah, because she had all these trees in there. So it was primarily shade, dappled shade at most. She had one place against the back of her house that got more sun because that was the one place that there weren't trees like there. And she put roses there. I'm not a rose person. I grew up in Baytown and, you know, they just mildewed. And so I just never really did roses, but then I had a chemical plant in Antioch, California. They just stuck them in the ground. I'm going, how do you get the roses to grow? And he said, put them in the ground. And I went, oh, okay. Then they need a drier environment. And so she was able to do, well, her landscape people, you know, were able to do it. My sister's not a gardener. Okay, so water. How much water does the spot get? Select the plant suited to the water and sun levels. One thing that that kind of I think is a little bit misleading is that any native that you get is going to require less water. Well, you know, there's a reason that a swamp sunflower is called a swamp sunflower. How much water do we think that needs? A lot. Okay, so select the plant that's suited to the water and sun levels. Natives typically have much longer roots, so will do better. You might need to water even low water natives while they're being established if you have zero shade, so you get like 10 plus hours of sun and you're in a drought. And a lot of times, where I am for sure, during July and August, I'm gonna have days without rain or weeks without rain. Then I know I'm gonna have to water. This one has been unusual. In fact, for the first time since we bought that property in 2006, we have mosquitoes. In 2006, we had mosquitoes galore. And so when I designed the house, I designed it with screened in porches on the end. Never screened them because we didn't need them. This year I'm going, should have screened them, you know, because I mean, we've just got so many mosquitoes. I heartily recommend mosquito dunks. Here's a side note. We had the mosquito lady from the Woodlands Township that came and talked to us and told us about mosquito dunks, and that mosquitoes only need like a bottle cap in order to be able to reproduce. Okay, so I have way more than bottle cap, you know, at this point. Okay, so define native. So again, is the plant native to your area of Texas, or does it only grow in Big Bend? Now I looked them up because I want to make sure that it is going to grow where I am. And it may be a cultivar of a true native. That is also something that I have found that has been annoying to me. You know, like Tacoma stands, you'll see them a lot in Houston. So Harris County, where I am, they die back to the ground every year. In Houston, they'll stay evergreen all year, but they'll get to be 16 feet tall and have the big bright yellow flowers on them. And then I went to a native plant sale and they said, oh, here's one that has orange flowers. Well, that's because it was a cultivar of a native, and that's not what I was looking for. Okay, and remember herbs, because many herbs are host plants too. I'm also a member of the Herb Society of America. Huntsville has a unit. They don't call them chapters, they call them units, and it's the Texas Time Unit, which I kind of thought was a play on words, you know, since we've got all those prisons there. They assure me it wasn't, but, you know, I still think that it must have been when they decided on that name. But anyway, but there's also a couple that are in the Houston area too. So anyway, if you like herbs, I heartily recommend the Herb Society. You don't have to have a certain number of hours or anything. It's like you go for the love of herbs, and it's cool. Okay, so this, when I get moved in, and then I decided I needed a butterfly garden. And so I wanted it to be, you know, on the side of the driveway. And so I drew out this spot. So this bad boy is 60 feet long, you know, and 3 feet wide. And my my son-in-law said, what, 60 feet long? We ought to be able to see that on Google Earth. And I went, really? And you can see my butterfly garden on, you can't see the individual plants, but you can see, you know, the outline and the shape of it on Google Earth. So this year, I had black-eyed Susan, brown-eyed Susan, Confederate daisy, vervain, which I actually paid good money for, and then I found out it popped up everywhere out there. Milkweed, Columbine, Mexican hat, zinnias, not native, but pollinators love them, mealy blue sage, and then some host plants, dill, parsley, basil. Okay, because they love the herbs. Here was, this was like my first year, and so I had 43, you can't see the thing for that. Anyway, it was like 43 swallowtail caterpillars on dill. And I'm going, I'm all that, you know, okay. So look what I did. Can you get rid of that green and red thing?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, anyway, yikes, sorry. Okay, so 43 caterpillars on dill. I posted this on Facebook. My sister said, you posted bugs on, I said, I did. I posted bugs on Facebook. So then I go over to her house and check this. So my sister's unintentional one plant butterfly garden on parsley.
Someone in the chat asked if you could go back to the plant list slide with plants.
This, oh, yes, yeah. Okay, so I go up to my sister's, pull into her driveway, and she's got these pots along her garage, you know, that this one has basil, this one has parsley, this one has it. And I look at the parsley, I'm going, oh my gosh, 6 swallowtail caterpillars. So I go in and I said, Linda, oh my gosh, you've got 6 swallowtail caterpillars on your parsley. And she said, oh, do I need to spray them? No, no, go to the store and buy parsley. Are you kidding me? My gosh, you've got a butterfly garden going here. And so anyway, yeah, I should have posted it. Yeah, maybe I did post it. I'm not sure. I know I posted mine. Oh, did y'all get that?
Yes.
We good? Okay, all right. Okay, so anyway, and then there were my swallowtail caterpillars. And then there was my sister's swallowtail caterpillars, which I recognized because they look just like mine. Except mine were on dill, hers were on parsley. Okay, and now I want to talk about specific plants. Okay, so this is like a loblolly pine on my property. So most of these pictures are from my property. Some of them are not, but a lot of them are. Okay, so Mike had posted a slide that said like this particular, it's not even genus, it's above genus. It's King Philip came over from family, like oaks. You know, there are like 489 different caterpillar species that they are host, or butterfly and moth species that they're host plants for. Okay, so trees are a good host plant. Okay, a lot of people say, oh, but if I do this host plant, then it's just going to eat it, and then my flower bed's going to look terrible. Well, you know what? Plant another one, or plant a tree. For goodness sakes, they're never going to be able to eat all the leaves off of an oak tree. You know, and so plant a tree because they're also host plants. Okay, so on the left, we have a black Tupelo. It's a special, and what I did, I went for this, I was obsessed for this presentation. I went into the Lady Bird Johnson, wildflower.org, and I looked like anywhere it said special value to honeybees or whatever it was, I put as much information as I could on each slide, on each plant here. Okay, so, and also birds and mammals eat the fruit from a Tupelo. Okay, American sweet gum. I just found out when I posted one of these on iNaturalist is that they also are one like the Texas star hibiscus, you know, that comes close but really doesn't get here. And so it's naturalized in our area, but it is actually not native to here. I only just found that out. But it is a larval host for a Luna moth. So there is a Luna moth pupa that I found in my yard. It was so exciting. I gave it to my grandson's science teacher. She was so excited. Anyway, so it's a larval host. The seed balls attract several bird species. It's a nesting site cover. And a lot of people think it's a trash tree. It tends to spread. So you kind of have to, particularly if you got 100 acres, you got to keep a handle on the sweet gums. But still, it's it's a good host plant. A Drummond red maple. I don't have one of these. Actually, these pictures are not from mine. But it's a larval host for a lot of sphinx moths. And it says the seeds are food for birds and squirrels. Leaves are food for deer. So if you're trying to get something that is deer proof, don't get one of these. Okay, because they'll eat it. Okay, a box elder maple, larval host for a silk moth. Special value to honeybees, attracts birds. Oaks. Look at this. I just listed all of these. I just listed like the first 15. An oak is a really, really good one. And I just put SPP for several species because, I mean, almost any oak species that you're going to want to get is going to be good to go. They attract songbirds, ground birds, and mammals. Their substrate is used by insectivorous birds, nuts and pollens. I mean, the acorns, the deers eat the acorns. I mean, and then they're larval hosts for many species. A fringe tree, this is one of my all-time favorites, and I love these. They're smaller trees, and there's a Chinese fringe tree, and then this Virginicus. This is the native. It's a lot smaller and not quite as showy as the Chinese. So if you're looking for a fringe tree, make sure you get this one because this is the native. Southern Living calls it the best native tree nobody grows. But these are the flowers, and for a lot of the natives, as far as the flowering part goes, like a red bud, it's what, 2 weeks or something. And so a fringe tree is like 2 or 3 weeks, kind of like an azalea, 2 weeks. And so, and where you have some other natives that flower for 5 months or 6 months, but this is a short one, but it's amazing while it is. Okay, a black cherry. This one is another, if you can find a black cherry, get it. Because it is, the fruit's concerned by 33 bird species. The leaves contain a thing that may be harmful for livestock, so don't plant it in the middle of a pasture where you have cattle. But it's a special value to native bees, bumblebees, honeybees. It's larval host. And it's just a really, really, really nice tree. Mexican plum. I have tons of these. We have a cabin on our property, and I ringed the cabin with these little Mexican plum trees. And then we're about to get decent internet. Mid-South Synergy is putting in fiber optic cable, and they're going to offer it to their people. And they just came to make sure that it was clear, and they made me move half of my plum trees. I don't know if they're going to survive. But anyway, a Mexican plum is a larval host again to a tiger swallowtail and some moths, special value to native bees. The birds and mammals eat the plums. Flowering dogwood. We have a lot of flowering dogwoods on our property, and they're just so beautiful. Anyway, larval host, special value to native bees. Everybody else eats the fruit. So again, a lot of times on the natives, you'll get a threefer. You'll get a threefer because it's a larval host. Then it's a special value to native bees for the nectar, and then everybody else eats the fruit. So you get a threefer, which is as good as it gets. Plus they're pretty, so 4-4. Okay, an eastern redbud. It's a special value to native bees and provides nesting materials. A tulip poplar. I don't have one of these. I want one. It's a larval host for a tulip tree silk moth and an eastern tiger swallowtail. Special value to honeybees. But I love that flower. I love that flower. Do I have I thought I had a sassafras in here. Okay, a Parsley Hawthorn is really cool. The leaves look like parsley, hence, but it's a hawthorn. So, it's got the thorns and it's got the red berries. It's a special value to native bees and a nectar source for butterflies, and everybody else eats the fruit. Honey locust, I have a bunch of these. Larval host, cover and nesting sites. It also has thorns. Vitex. Okay, so I love Vitex. Pollinators love it. I have one at I don't know if my big one at the end of my porch just almost didn't come back after the freeze. So I'm not sure. People either love them or hate them. It's on several invasives list. I've never had it be invasive. It's also a Texas superstar. So you master gardener, guess what? Vitex is a Texas superstar. Okay, and you choose. I love them because they're pollinator magnets. And my goal is to support pollinators. Okay.
Is it native or is it not native?
It's native to Mexico and southern Texas. It's not native to Walker County, and it's not native to Harris County or Montgomery. It is native into Texas, but in the southern regions. The only place that I have seen that they've actually said that it has spread where they didn't really want it to is like in central Texas, like some of the dry creek beds, and then they get a flash flood, and then all of a sudden you got these seeds everywhere. And so they've had a problem with it there. That's the only place that I've seen it in print, other than being on all these invasives lists that I haven't seen any backup. And I'm a scientist, so I'm going to actually see where they got their data. And I haven't seen anything other than that one. Okay, opossum haw, this is my favorite small tree. And it is an ilex, so the same genus as Yopon, but this is the deciduous one. And so what happens with this, instead of having each little berry on like the end of its own little stem, these berries are like right on the main stem or branch or whatever. And then the leaves fall off in the winter, and you have this grayish, light gray bark with these. This is what you get, just covered in all these orange red berries. They're stunning, stunning. And then spring comes and it's just getting ready to bud out, and all of a sudden you get a bunch of cardinals and go in like 30 seconds, every berry is gone. And okay, did its job. And so, I mean, I love these. I love opossum haw. This is another one I paid good money for and then found them on my property. Okay. Trees, a Hercules Club, we have these, and this is, this was on my property, this picture, not the butterfly, but the tree. And anyway, it's the larval host for a giant swallowtail, and the seeds are eaten by different birds. Yeah, here's my sassafras. We have these all over the place, and it's the larval host for swallowtails, and it's a nectar source, and birds eat the fruit. Are y'all familiar with the sassafras? It is so cool because the leaf, it's got 3 different shapes of leaves on one tree. Okay, so one of them looks just like a regular leaf. One of them looks like this trident thing, and one of them looks like a mitten. I mean, how cool is that? And so anyway, I love a sassafras. Okay, shrubs, we're moving on into shrubs. Okay, so like a Virginia sweet spire. This one is not actually native to here, but I got this from Diana Foss. She said these are amazing, and during the winter that they're just great. They're just great. And so anyway, I'm going to get one of these. But it attracts bird, and it's a nectar thing. Okay, a white honeysuckle is not a vine. This is a bush, special value to bumblebees. The deers eat it. If you're trying to avoid deers, this is not for you. Oh no, this is the one she sent me, the white honeysuckle, Somebody else sent me the Virginia sweet spire because she told me it's Central Texas native. But it's covered in bees through the winter. So this is a really nice one because remember, we want to feed them all year round. Okay, so let's go with this one. Okay, this I love. This may be my favorite shrub. Okay, this is a coral bean, another one. I paid good money for the one on the left, and then I found the one in the middle there on my property. I ended up finally having to take out this one. What I was expecting was for it to get about as big as the one in the middle. What it did in reality was get to be, I had to trim it down to like 12 feet wide and 12 feet tall. So it's kind of problematic trying to get up my front sidewalk. And I said, okay, but the flowers are amazing. That one in the upper right-hand corner is like a more of a close-up of the flowers, and they're just beautiful. I finally had to take it out, and because I couldn't get up the sidewalk, and it pretty much crowded out everything else in that flower bed. But I'm gonna plant one like in the yard and just hope it's another place that it really loves to grow. Okay, so out there in the pasture, you get the thing in the middle because it doesn't get watered. It's like in full sun, 14 hours of sun. Well, so is the one in the house, in front of the house, but the one in front of the house got watered like mad because I was trying to establish everything. Okay. Okay, here's the Esperanza or yellow bells or Tacoma stands. For the longest time, I thought that was moth. That's a skipper butterfly, come to find out. Okay, so anyway, on that, I took that with my phone. I took all these with my phone, the ones that are from my property. And it's a larval host to a plebeian sphinx. It also is a great nectar source, The American beautyberry, I have tons of these. If you put an American beautyberry in a flower bed, the more you water it, the more berries you're going to get, or the more water it gets. So if you have a place that it's going to get some water, then you're going to have purple berries galore. And it is so pretty. It's so pretty. I just let mine kind of go whichever way they want to. But you can even, trim them to like make a shape, if that's your thing. But really they're more kind of each individual thing. Okay. Okay, a rock rose. This is not native to this area, but there are a lot of them here. It's more native to Central Texas, and it is a spring and summer bloomer, and it will reseed itself. So it'll either die back to the ground or just go away completely in the winter, but then you'll find one here and here and here. And so if you want it just in that one spot, you have to maybe, keep an eye on it for other places, but it's really nice. And I have one in my butterfly garden now. Well, I have ones this tall in my butterfly garden now because it was also one of mine. It didn't really do well in the -2 degrees. But little, it's trying to save itself. Anyway, but I like a rock rose. The one on the right is not a native here. It's a native in Florida, but not Texas. And it's a Duranta, and this one is the golden dewdrop. But look at this. It is also a pollinator magnet. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so it is unbelievable. But I've been told that there are some that are thornless. Do you know?
A Duranta?
Duranta?
This one is thornless.
Mine have thorns all over it, and my almond in my house absolutely despise the thing. We wound up taking it out, but it is fantastic for pollination.
Oh yeah. Well, then you know what? I've never seen one with thorns. So maybe this one is great.
Yeah,
Okay, now it's
deadly.
okay. It's now called Duranta erecta. It used to be repens. They changed the species name of it for whatever reason, I don't know. But this one, and it's called golden dewdrop.
Yeah, that's what mine.
That's what you're supposed to do?
It had spikes, like they were like hypodermic needles.
Holy moly. I have no idea. Okay, I'm gonna have to look that up now. All right, okay. Anyway, this I love. I have a bunch of pictures of butterflies and stuff on my Duranta because, pollinators love it. Texas lantana, spring, summer bloomer, pollinators love it. It attracts butterflies. It's deer proof. So that's one, if you want to avoid deer, that's a good one for you. The one on the right, flame acanthus. It's a larval host, and it has the kind of flower that butterflies can do it because the pollen comes out, there, and bees, but yet it's good for hummingbirds. One of my cats used to sit under my flame acanthus. She was a hummingbird aficionado. It's kind of unfortunate for the hummingbirds, but anyway, still a nice plant. Okay. My mother-in-law also used to hang hummingbird feeders, and Jasmine, she could leap through the air, and finally I said, Mimi, quit with the feeders. Quit with the feeders. You're setting up a smorgasbord for the cat. Just saying. Okay. The shrub on the left is a button bush, and you see it on the edge of this pond or whatever. It likes water. It likes water. And so that's where you want to plant it. The one on in the big, this was not on my property, but I did plant some, but they haven't been there long enough to have given me the button, the big brown things yet. Okay, but the one on the left has the maroon colored ones, but then I found a picture of this one that has a white one. I'm not entirely sure which one I'm going to end up with. The one on the right is a Turk's cap. Turk's cap can take shade, part shade, or sun. This one, mine are in full sun. A Turk's cap will travel. You got to really watch a Turk's cap. So if you want something that will just go anywhere, get a Turk's cap. If that's problematic for you, don't get one because it doesn't care what you want. It's pretty much going to go wherever it wants to. Okay. Viburnums, I have never had any luck whatsoever with a viburnum, but then I drive up FM 247, on my way home, and they're huge. And I don't know what it is that they're doing that I'm not, but I've tried like 3 different kinds, or 2 rusty black haws and 1 arrowwood, and neither of them would grow for me. So, and they died kind of slow, painful deaths. So I haven't gotten another one. But anyway, these are also They're nectar sources and larval hosts. And they get to be varying sizes. And these are all native. Okay, vines. Okay, on the left, you got a pipevine. Well, both of these are pipevines. Okay, this one on the left is actually one that has popped up in my yard because I apparently had one to begin with. And I've dug them up and taken them to people. And I've planted them other places myself because they end up like at the edge of the foundation or something. And I don't want them to get weed eated because this is the host for a Dutchman's, for a pipevine swallowtail. The one, this variegated one is from Brazil. There is only like one native pipevine, and it's like on the East Coast. It's from the East, native from West Virginia to Kentucky, Tennessee, and parts of Georgia, but it's naturalized over much of the East Coast. It's the one that you'll most often see at the retail level, and that's not the variegated one. There is one other one that you can get that has really big leaves, and I don't remember where it's from. Avoid that one because it has so much of the, okay, so like a pipevine and milkweed, one of the reasons that those butterflies evolved with that is that the plants have this toxin in it that makes the caterpillars taste bad. And so the big pipevine has so much of that toxin that the caterpillars can't survive it. So don't get that one. Don't get that one if you see it. And I don't know the name of it, but I talked to one gardener who had it, and he seriously regretted getting it because it's been killing his caterpillars, which was not his intent.
So none of the pipevines are native here.
No, none of the pipevines. You can get the one at the retail level that has naturalized here, or you can find this variegated one. And those are both good. And pipevine swallowtails will eat them. But the big one they'll eat, but they'll die, which we don't want to do. We don't want to invite them to dinner and kill them.
So why bring it in a plant if it's not native and then promoting native plants?
Because I'm promoting pollinators. I'm promoting pollinators, and I want the pipevine swallowtail to have something to eat.
There's nothing else it will eat.
Correct. Okay, yeah, because every single species of butterfly or moth or whatever pretty much has 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 plants that they'll eat that are their host plants for their caterpillars.
All right, then let me ask the next logical question. Is the pipevine swallowtail native here? Obviously not, because it's got nothing to eat. So you're bringing the
Well,
food to bring
I don't know. But I suspect it was native here, and whatever it was that it was native to no longer exists here. That would be my guess. But I know for sure this one that was native from West Virginia to Kentucky, Tennessee, and parts of Georgia, maybe they started there, and as it naturalized in the eastern United States, then the pipevine swallowtails moved that way. And so I can still get that one, but I can also get this variegated thing, and I'm going to feed them because I like them. That's me.
How likely is it that you will attract the pipevine swallowtail just by putting in the plant?
Okay, it is, okay, so we actually had a pipevine caterpillar rescue going up there. Okay, so my friends Jean and Rhonda each had pipevine, and Jean's caterpillars ate all of her pipevine. And so she called Rhonda knowing that Rhonda had pipevine and said, do you have any pipevine left? Because mine is like down in the nubs. And Rhonda said, yes. So if they would have had sirens, and I'll tell you, they would have used it. But anyway, so Jean collected all of her caterpillars, took them over to Rhonda's, and they put them on Rhonda's pipevine. And so Rhonda ended up with all the butterflies. But yeah, they're here.
My son, he's opened up a doctor's in Florida, and I was just recently visiting, and he's got some pipeline growing all over the place and lots of caterpillars on it. And he's saying, I'm going to plant some of that. And I said, well, that's not really native here. You won't do it. Pipeline's growing to know.
Only because it's naturalized
So I
here.
wonder, okay, if I plant it, will they come?
Yeah. Yes, for this one. Not the one, and I don't even remember what it was I was going to do for the butterfly in Maine. No, but for a pipevine swallowtail that's already here, probably because this plant has naturalized to here, then yeah. Oh, they eat all the caterpillars. And that's what, I had those 43 swallowtail caterpillars that first year. And then the next year I found like 3. And somebody told me it was because of the wasps. Because once they know where they are, then they come, and I'm going, okay, so how do you fix that? Well, you got to put a net over it. I'm going, oh my God. Okay, so anyway, yeah, I've got to work a little harder on it. Okay, coral honeysuckle vine. This one was from out in our woods. And it's a larval host, and it's special value to honeybees. Okay, look at the one on the right. Okay, so as I'm looking up vines, okay, so I find the Carolina Jasmine, and I'm on the wildflower door, and it said flowers attract native bees. It says it's a mainstay of the suburban landscape, and it reaches 10 to 20 feet. And then I read on, and it says, the flowers, leaves, and roots are poisonous and are toxic or lethal to humans and livestock if consumed. The nectar is toxic to honeybees if consumed in sufficient quantities. Honey produced may be toxic to humans. Wait a minute. Then why is this a mainstay of the suburban garden? Are you kidding me? So here's my thought. I mean, I had just bought one, so I destroyed it. I destroyed it. I'm not going to have a Carolina Jessamine. That's me. I mean, y'all, have whatever you want, but if I'm going to do something that's toxic, particularly like the honeybees, even though honeybees are not native, and I totally get that, but still. That's what I feel about that one. Okay, crossvine. It's an evergreen vine with a glossy leaf, trumpet flowers, hummingbirds are attracted to it. Trumpet vine, and these are native. I see them growing down FM 247 all the time. They can reach, there's another thing that I put in here, how big they get. Can reach 50 feet, can reach 35 feet, 3 to 20 feet, 10 to 20 feet. So depending on 15 to 30. So if you want something that's going to like completely grow over a trellis, get one that gets a little bit longer, or plant 2, one from each end, right? Because these vines may not cover what you want it to cover because they just can't get there from here. Okay, this blue jasmine, I'm lusting after a blue jasmine, and it only gets 6 to 10 feet. So it's going to just be something that I put up just a little baby trellis, and just plant it there. Alamo vine, an attractive twining climber in the morning glory family, 6 to 12 feet. I want to get one of these too. Okay, it may be, can be very aggressive. This may be a more Central Texas one, but still. Passion vine or passion flower. There are 7 native species in Texas. One way to tell if it's a native is if its leaves are 3-lobed. The 5-lobed are typically a hybrid. A lot of the pipevines that you get in a nursery are going to be hybrids. So if you want a native, go to a native plant cell and look for the 3-lobed leaves. But they're all kinds of, they're larval host to the Gulf fritillary, the different kinds of fritillaries and hair streaks and longwings. And the flowers are amazing. So this is the host plant on the top left. And then there's my Duranta again with a Gulf fritillary. Okay, a giant coneflower. This is like the one on the right, okay, is the purple coneflower, so it's an echinacea. The purple coneflowers that we typically get here are actually not native here, but this is the only game we got going. But they're native more to like the Northeast, but they're adapted here, and this is what you can buy. The actual native, you can't even find, but their pollinators love them. Love them, love them. The one on the left is called a giant coneflower, but it's not an echinacea. It's a rudbeckia, so it's really like a giant black-eyed Susan. And this is what they do. They get 8 feet tall. They get 8 feet tall, and then you can just, after they quit blooming, just cut off the stems, and then the foliage is about 1.5 feet tall, and it's evergreen. So I really like these. They do spread. You want to don't do what I do or what I did and wait 6 years before you thin them out. You know, kind of do it every year. Okay. Okay, blue mist flower or Greg's blue mist flower, special value to native bees. You can see this whole thing is covered in different kinds of butterflies. And this is a native. When I plant them and they get lots of sun and enough water, if I end up watering, then they'll get huge. And sometimes they even get so big they fall over and then they will come back again. When I find them like out in our woods or by our one of our creeks, then they're little bitty, but they're still there. Mealy blue sage, a salvia on the left. That's a native. I love it, love it. Lance leaf coreopsis is a special value to native bees. And this is another thing that I found. It supports conservation biological control. I found this on the Lady Bird Johnson website, the wildflower.org. That means that it supports insects that kill other or that eat other insects that we don't want. Okay. It's a nectar source and it's a spring and summer bloomer. Black-eyed Susan is the Rudbeckia. So again, you see this black-eyed Susan and then this giant coneflower, a lot of the same colors. And yeah, those are both Rudbeckias. Okay, on the right-hand side is a Blackfoot daisy. I really like it. It's very small, very small. I haven't had a whole lot of luck with it. I think it may need more calcareous soils than I have. Mexican hat, I love. Anywhere I've put Mexican hat in my yard, it looks great. It gets big. Heartleaf skullcap. This, be aware, is in the mint family. So it is, I love it and it's beautiful and it's going to spread. It's not as bad as like a regular herb mint, like spearmint or peppermint or any of those, not like one of those, but it comes up. But you can actually control this, whereas mints, once you have them, it's brutal. Okay, these were some of my girlfriends. We all graduated from high school together. This was the start of my bluebonnet thing. So they said, oh, we got to take a picture with the bluebonnets. And I'm going, okay, this is the game we got going. So anyway, those I planted in my yard. The aromatic Gaster, I don't have any of these. I found it and I want to get some. And this is another one that supports the conservation biological control. And this is a fall bloomer. This is a fall bloomer. The one on the right is a fall bloomer. Okay, Gulf Coast Penstemon. These I've had luck with everywhere, but I'll tell you about a Gulf Coast Penstemon. They'll go everywhere. They'll go everywhere. You'll find them all over your flower bed. You can pass them around. And then on the right is a yellow columbine. Most columbines that I've seen want to be on the mountains, but there is one that is native to Texas and will grow here. And that's this one. These planted together look really good. Okay, so then going back to the your plant where it really wants to be based on water and sun and all that. How much water do you think this Texas spider lily needs? A lot. Yeah, it's like sitting in a pond. It's like sitting in a water feature. Okay, and so it's going to need a lot of water. So don't plant it with other stuff that wants dry feet. Okay, American water willow. Water willow, what do we think about that one? Wants a lot of water. In fact, is Scott talking about the Friends of Lake Livingston thing? Does he do that for here? Okay, anyways, Scott Ball, who was here earlier, heads up this Friends of Lake Livingston thing, and they are introducing native species to Lake Livingston, and the American water willow is where they started. And so, and they've learned to plant this in the shallower water that doesn't get a lot of tidal action until they get established. And now they're putting them in like pens and stuff. It's a wonderful, wonderful presentation that he has on that, and a really nice project. And I know the project is an approved thing, right? Yeah, today. And then they said they were afraid of the weather or something. And so it got postponed again. But anyway, this is what they started off with. So any of these, if you have a lot of water, or a water feature, either of these would be good. Swamp sunflower, again, how much water? Okay, so so like on the edge of a pond, I mean, these are great. Fall and actually they'll adapt even to like drought conditions. But I love the swamp sunflower. The fall obedient plant. Okay, so these, again, since it says fall, then they're a fall bloomer, but I have some now that are just now starting to bloom. So they're blooming earlier than I would have thought. Okay, clovers, special, all of these said every single one said special value to native bees, special value to bumblebees, and special value to honeybees. So you want something where you're really going to support some pollinators, plant some clover. My favorite books, Native Texas Plants, Landscaping Region by the Wasowskis. And then 2 Doug Tallamy books. The one that I've had forever is Bringing Nature Home. And then his latest book is Nature's Best Hope. Either of those really good. Howard Garrett, Texas Gardening the Natural Way. Texas Wildscapes, Gardening for Wildlife. And then for the herb Bible, really, this one by Madeline Hill and her daughter, Gwen Barclay. She was in the Herb Society of America. So I don't remember the name of the unit, but anyway, it's the one that's in Round Top. Yeah, and they have the thing that's the place where the guy does the music venue thing, right? Anyway, they have an herb, huge group there, and they do this massive plant sale every year. But she was a member of that group, and she wrote this book, and it is the definitive herb growing thing for Texas. So wrapping it up, pollinators evolved with, this is a little, it's a little short guy, and this one has some thorns, but it's in the mimosa family, but it's a native, and it's some kind of puff is in its name because it's got these beautiful little puff flowers. Sensitive plant? Yeah. Okay, cool. So the pollinators evolved with the natives, as did the other insects, and they need nectar plants and may need host plants. Choose the plant to suit your purpose. You may not have native soil, but you can still plant natives. Pollinators and other wildlife will thank you. Some plants, including natives, need lots of sun. Some don't. Plant accordingly. Some plants, including natives, need lots of water. Some don't. Plant accordingly. Ensure your pollinator and the plant is native to your area. Any questions? Any questions? No? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I have an area that I've tried so many things in, fighting deer, for one thing. I have so many deer in my yard. And that particular part of the yard is not fenced.
Okay.
Okay. It's so very shady under this tree. So the only sun it gets is on one end. And I wanted to plant natives in there. I've tried everything. Right now I just have a few of Dewdrop and I want to take all that out and plant natives. What do you think I'm thinking?
Okay, so the question is something that's deer resistant in a shady area, right? Okay, so and do you want low or do you? I would plant for sure. I'd put an American beautyberry. American beautyberry. I have them everywhere, and they don't get eaten. They don't get eaten. Really?
I have some very hungry deer.
Apparently.
So I moved the beautyberry
into the, okay. Maybe I just have so many beautyberries that they don't get to them all. But no, honestly, I haven't seen the eaten leaves on any of them. And we're on 100 acres of woods, but then maybe lyre-leaf sage. I don't have lyre-leaf sage in here. Lyre-leaf sage is a native, and it will spread on its own. Okay, so I had lyre-leaf sage all outside my gate, And then, and it was beautiful. It was like carpeted, the thing. And then I came home and it was mowed before they went to seed. Because the guy that mows our place decided that that he needed to make sure that it was trim out there. And I'm going, you're kidding me, right? And, Lyre, another word, sage. Lyre, lyre leaves. So the leaves look like lyres, yeah. And so that's one. Although they can grow. They grow around my cabin, which is totally shade. They grow better in sun, but they'll still grow in shade. And let me give it some more thought on.
I can also look, maybe try to look up on, did you say the Ladybird Johnson?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
That website is really great because it lets you say how much sun you get.
Right.
Whether it needs to be dew
Mm-hmm.
resistant, how much water it's going to get.
It has good filters. Yeah.
Shows you everything that's going to grow you want.
Yes.
Lisa,
Yeah, it's called wildflower.org, I think is the actual.
could you go back to your list of books?
Yes.
Is it possible to send this out? We have it recorded, I'm just recording it. I wanted to let you know this, just print, I'd like to print some. Oh yeah, the Texas Law Stakes Gardening for Wildlife. There are 2 editions. The first edition is all print. The second edition they included a CD with. Unfortunately, the CD will only run on Flash, which is no longer supported, so you can't run the CD. So do not buy the latest edition, make sure you get the older edition, okay? And our Diana Foss helped write that book.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I must have the earlier edition. I didn't even know about the CD problem.
Right, I bought both,
Okay.
and because I thought this would be great for our
Yeah.
landscape advisor program,
Yeah.
for us to have this to refer to.
Yeah.
Got the second one, because it's supposed to have like the Ladybird Johnson, where you can type in what your requirements are. Couldn't get the CD to run.
Oh.
Tried to pirate a copy of Flash, and couldn't do that.
Oh, darn the luck.
Worked on it, and finally I decided, okay, back to Amazon.
All right.
There you go.
Bummer, man.
So just thought I'd. throw
Well,
that
thank
out
you.
there. You're
Yeah.
welcome.
And I had no
She
idea
made
that Diana
older
was,
edition.
oh, well, cool.
Yeah, Diana Foss helped write it.
Cool.
Any other questions? Can you see anything great in the chat? People are answering their own questions.
Anybody? Yes, sir?
I have a question.
About herbs?
Yeah.
Okay.
So is cilantro, that's 2-parter. Is cilantro native herb Texas? If so, is it really
Is cilantro a native herb?
Okay, now they had asked.
Okay, yeah, is cilantro a native herb? And if so, is it any benefit to pollinators? I don't know which herbs are native or not, to tell you the truth. Cilantro is a winter herb. And there's another thing about herbs too. Some of them are summer, like basil for sure. If it goes below 50 degrees, basil isn't gonna make it. But cilantro is winter and it'll pop up in your yard. It is, yes, it has tiny little flowers that the pollinators will get on. I don't think it's a host plant. Again, probably because it's a winter herb, a winter grower. Although dill likes cooler weather, and it is definitely a host plant for a swallowtail. So that'll be something for me to look up. Would y'all jot that down for me or something so that I'll remember to look up cilantro? Or maybe I'll remember, or remind me, because 20 seconds will pass, it'll be out of there. So remind me on the way out to look that up. Yes, sir.
So I fully get the theory about if you dig a hole and mix it with 50-50 new soil and native soil, that your roots can get wet. Are you also, do you have any open mind to the other idea that at least you create a water bowl there so that in the drought conditions we have here, typically in the hot summers, the plants actually, the water is going to be held in down at the bottom of that bowl, and the tree will do well because it's actually got a water source. I've actually done this many times. I do dig a big hole now and mix it deliberately, so I've got a water bowl. I don't need to water as much through the summer. It actually retains the water.
Yeah.
The arguments both ways.
Okay, so the question is about the whole thing, digging a big hole. and creating New Orleans, so having a bowl that it's going to sit in. It depends, I think, on how much rain you end up getting at one time, and plus how much clay do you really have and how porous is it. If it won't drain in like 15 minutes or 30 minutes or 3 hours, if it sits in there and you go back 3 hours later and it's still full to the top, I think you're going to drown whatever it is. If you do this water leak test or whatever and it drains out maybe in 15 minutes, then it's less problematic. Or if it drains out even in 1 hour, it's less problematic.
Or you dig it deep enough, the water's in.
Or dig it deep enough.
And the roots are above there, and
Yeah.
the water keeps percolating up as the plant needs it.
Yeah. What I try to do now, if I'm going to plant something where I know that I'm going to want the root of my tree to go through clay, then we have a tractor with a drill thing on the end of it. I just drill down there and then I put a whole bunch of dirt, because what I've done before is ended up inadvertently planting my trees too deep because I didn't build it up high enough. And then when it settled, then they ended up to be too low. That was before I knew really how to plant a tree. Again, back to gardening by hoping for the best. Didn't do well, didn't go well for the trees, from the get-go. But now I know better, how to plant a tree. But yeah, make sure the critical part about a tree, are we talking about trees? Shrubs, yeah, is to plant them high enough, because you want to see the top of the root ball. You want it to be uncovered. It's got to be uncovered. Otherwise, they're going to smother. They'll just never do well. Never do well. And then what you don't want is for a tree to get 40 feet tall or 30 feet tall or something. And then all of a sudden it says, I just can't do this anymore. And it falls over on your house.
A question over here.
Yes, sir.
Is that, are the aromatic asters deer resistant?
Are the aromatic asters deer resistant? Let me go back.
I have some issue.
Special value supports conservation. I don't know. And apparently Ladybird Johnson wildlife.org did not answer that question. So I have no idea, but look how pretty they are. I mean, really.
We have this growing in my backyard.
The aromatic aster?
And yes, I have some issue.
Okay.
And they came up wild. And so I've just left them, and every year they double and triple in size, the size of the bed. And we have deer who run through our neighborhood.
Yay.
And so they don't.
Okay. So
They'll eat the mist flower. For the mist flower, they'll come to the yard and they won't eat the leaves. What they do is they wait till it starts to die, and then they eat all the buds off. So they get flowers.
Oh.
So they're live headed.
All right.
They're pre-headed. They're pre-heading all of my blue mist flower.
Darn the luck.
But they don't touch the aster.
Okay, so the question was, is an aromatic aster deer resistant? And Carolyn has first-hand story about that. They came up wild in her flower bed. They keep getting more every year. They have deer ranging through the neighborhood, and the deer don't eat them. But she said they do eat the blue mist flower. Okay, okay, so the comment here is deer like the new growth. The new growth. Cage? Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. What I have done, if I have something that, the question is, should you put some kind of cage around it? What I have done, like a Tractor Supply, I'm assuming there's a Tractor Supply down here, but anyway, you can get those green and white metal poles, which I don't remember what those are called, but T-posts, I guess. Yeah, and you can get them 4 feet tall, 5 feet, 6 feet, 6.5, however long, for however tall it is that you want to go. And then you can just get a roll of wire. So I get like 2 poles and then just make a circle. And then if it's going to be something tall, then I may even put a little that can reach over it to get whatever it is that I want. Then I may put a little top on it if it's something I want to protect. And that at least gives it long enough to get established. That's what I have done, particularly like with new trees that are not going to be in a fenced part. But I mean, let's get real. I have a fence that a deer could jump over, but I've also got all these dogs. So, you know, around the house, they don't show up. You know, the deer just don't come there. But, you know, out like around the cabin, yeah, they do. But I had more troubles like with actually on our property with cows eating the tops of the cows also like the new growth. Just saying, yeah. Who knew? Any other questions, comments? We good? All right. Thank y'all.
Two questions? Okay, if y'all
Two
don't mind
questions.
staying seated for just a moment.
Thank you very much. Oh. Do I need to do anything to this? I don't have to.
Okay, make sure that I'm not giving you God's rule. Well, this is for the people who are here. Does everybody have one? And then that one? Okay, what I want you to do is to open yours. And I want you to find the person. So you're gonna have to get up and go around the room and look for the person that is a snot.
Is there anything else?
If we're on Zoom, are we able to leave or are we going to be doing anything else?
Not over.
Awesome. Isn't that amazing? That is so cool. Ruby, who did you find?
I found Lisa, our presenter.
Yeah.
Lisa teaches geology and prison.
So did you find? I found Carolyn. Baby cat, baby orangutan. Yes, and, I started with Keystone Plants. Who did you find?
Oh, over here. Suzanne. I found Suzanne, who loves Scotland and all things Scottish.
Oh, awesome. And then there's somebody that's going to Scotland. Yeah, yes, she is. So Suzanne, who did you find?
Well, I found Steve, and this is fascinating to me. He lived in Syria for over 3 years on the Euphrates River, and recently became better known, which, what's the name of the plot?
There was always a kind of name.
It became better known as the capital city of the ISIS caliphate, and he has worked in oil and gas all over the world, and that's what he was doing there, and he loved it.
But my wife didn't like it quite as much. She was wanting to be to get stoned by the kids and things.
Oh, no, that's.
I love it.
So what do you find, Steve?
Jessica, she developed a cook called genetically barcode mosquito.
For those of us on Zoom, are we done?
Yes.
I found Denise, and she is. Wow, that was
Lisa, can you hear me?
Yes?
Yes.
What was the tree that you had in your October last year presentation that had the bumps that you liked?
Oh, that was the Hercules Club.
Okay, thank you.
Hold on, I'll show you. This one?
Yes, because I didn't have that. That was the one.
Is that the one you're thinking of?
I think that's the one you had said you wanted to find one on your property, and so I guess you did.
Yes, I had, this one is from my property. Yeah, and I really like it.
It's very cool. I have one that
Yeah.
has like spikes on it, that are like 2 to 3 inches long, all up and down the trunk.
Oh, do you know what that is? That's
I
I think that was the
acacia.
locust,
Oh, a locust. Oh,
a honey locust.
I need to go out. I need to go back to the back of my property and see it with leaves on it because it was deciduous.
Yeah.
So it might be. I don't know. It's
I know a honey locust has some pretty serious thorns on it.
yeah. It's like 2
Which
to
I
3
like
inch.
these. I have found these now too.
Yeah, and I know they're amazing trees.